Alright, just yesterday, Anthropic accidentally leaked the entire source code behind Claude Code. That's 500,000 lines of code, nearly everything they've done. The system prompt, the hidden features, the secret model names, everything. And buried inside that were things that can genuinely change how you use the tool every day. So I went through everything, and these are the top 8 things that you actually have to know. Firstly, what actually happened? Well, like I mentioned at the start, 500,000 lines of TypeScript across 1,900 files were leaked. And these were leaked because apparently one missing line in a config file broke everything. So essentially they leaked something to a public database that was meant to be hidden. It's not necessarily a hack, it's more just a packaging incident and somebody internal making a mistake. Now what was inside this? We have the full system prompt, so the Claude's internal instructions. And if we really think about this, Claude is by far the biggest AI company, or the most advanced AI company when it comes to these AI coders that are building stuff, or AI agentic engineering. And if they're releasing their instructions, then by default, these are the most powerful instructions to give AI, considering they are the ones that are creating the most powerful AI system. So that's something we're going to jump into today. We also have how their memory system works behind the scenes. Some of this stuff hasn't been released yet, so it's important to know that also. We also have unreleased features that are coming soon. We have internal model names that they have, like these ones here. We have 44 hidden feature flags, and then we have this virtual pet system called /buddy, which is obviously not as useful, but it's there. All right, let's jump into the Claude MD file. Now, it's already very well known how powerful the Claude MD file is while you're using Claude Code, but I think in this leak it shows to an extent just how powerful and how necessary this is every single time you use Claude Code. So what is a Claude MD file? Well, it's basically like a plain text file you drop into your project folder where Claude Code reads it automatically every single session. Think of it like this: you employ somebody, or you employ a new personal assistant every single morning. So for some reason you're employing a new personal assistant every single morning, and every morning they come in, you have to tell them what to do. So the first morning they come in, you tell them, hey, here's our company colors, here's how we act, here's what we sell, and so on. But the thing about this personal assistant, although it's extremely smart, it has absolutely zero memory. So every single morning it walks in, or he or she walks in, we have to continuously tell it every morning, hey, you're a personal assistant, you're working for our company, here's what we do, here's what we say, here's what we sell. That's essentially what it's like when you don't have a Claude MD file. You have to constantly tell Claude Code exactly who we are, what we do, what we sell. And if you don't have a Claude MD file, then it has absolutely no idea, and you need to tell it every single time. Now on the flip side, when we have a Claude MD file, it's the equivalent to like pinning an instruction document or a one-page document over our company onto the office door. So whenever our personal assistant walks in, they know straight away exactly who we are, what we do, and what we sell. So we don't have to continuously repeat ourselves over exactly those instructions. So this saves us from constantly explaining and also giving the same instructions over and over again. So an example of what to put into a Claude MD file is simple stuff like this. Always use simple non-technical language, especially if you're a non-coder. If you don't know how to code, you can put this in. Stuff like this: never delete existing files without asking first. This project is a Shopify store for handmade candles, or stuff like our brand voice is casual and friendly. You get the general idea. We're essentially telling it the base instructions that it should have for every single change that it makes. Now, a pro tip is having a subdirectory of Claude MD files that override the root one. You don't need to worry about that in most cases, as you'll probably only have one directory or one repo. But if you're building out big projects, then you should probably look into this. Second thing that's pretty important that came out is this 3-layer memory system. Now, this is pretty similar to the Claude MD file, but it's different in its own sense because Claude does this itself. So the thing that this 3-layer system showed us is that Claude doesn't forget everything between sessions. It has a 3-tier system that gets smarter the more you use it. So we have layer 1, which is called the index, and this is a short table of contents that's always loaded, and it's a quick pointer to everything. So Claude is always going to have this in its memory. It's always going to load this, so every time you speak to Claude, it has this at the front of its brain. Then we have layer number 2, which is like topic files, and these are detailed notes on specific tasks and are only pulled when relevant. So for example, if we are working on a massive website, and on this website we sell supplement stuff for an e-com brand, and let's say we have a section that is for clothing and we have a section that's for supplements. So we're a fitness brand, we have clothing and supplements. If I was to say to Claude Code, hey, I want to refactor, I want to redesign the clothing side of this website, then the index would pull in the main details like this is an ecom brand in the fitness industry. The topic file would only pull in the specific things to the challenge or to the task that we are given to Claude. So in this instance, we're giving it the challenge of redesigning the clothing aspect of the website. So the topic file would pull in details and specific topics on the clothing side of the website. So it saves Claude pulling in everything about the website, and we only get the main things, which is the index, and the topic files, which is specific things about the actual question that we're asking. And layer 3 is the full transcript. So it's able to go through exactly what you've already said to Claude and search it like a filing cabinet so it can pull out specific things that you've already instructed Claude. So the takeaway from this is the longer you use Claude Code, the better it's going to get at your project. Alright, the next one we have here is how to prompt Claude better. The system prompt that was leaked literally says to be direct and skip the fluff. So what we want to do is match that energy in our prompt. So what that would look like, instead of saying something like to Claude, could you please take a look at this file and let me know if there's any issues you can find? Try something like check this file and list any issues. So we're just being a lot more direct and removing the fluff. Another thing is Claude can run stuff in parallel. So batch your tasks into one input so we're not constantly asking Claude questions in a fragmented way. So you can see here, instead of asking messages like this, where we type in firstly check the home page, now summarize the readme, and then list all of the image files, we can try something like this way where we give it one message like check the home page, summarize the readme file, and list all of the images. So we're being a lot more direct, and in here with the parallel agent feature in Claude Code, it's going to do all of these three things at once rather than over here where we do it sequentially one after the other. Now you might think that if we're doing parallel tasks like this one here where we're telling it to do everything at once, that it's going to cost more in token usage and so on. It actually doesn't. It shows us that it barely uses more tokens than doing them one by one. So it actually is better to do it like this where you batch them, because Claude has a lot more context on everything rather than one by one messages over here. Now another thing we've seen in this leak is Claude's ability to maintain context over a long conversation. It's been a long running thing in AI that models lose context in long conversations and they get worse as they go along, and that's been a common fear for a long while now. What this leak revealed is there's 5 built-in safety nets running behind the scene. So this is what it does automatically. At the start, it trims old tool outputs quietly in the background. Then it auto generates a summary when the conversation gets long. It also saves important facts to persistent storage. So anything you've done, maybe if you've used Claude Code today and you've made a big change, it will store that to a persistent storage. It also has full compress plus reset if things get really, really long. And then as a last resort, it drops the oldest messages, but only does this as a last resort. And that's where we tend to see that drop off, as in Claude Code not following our instructions as good as it was at the start of the session. Now, if you do get to this point where Claude starts to drop off deeper into the conversation, then you can say something like this to Claude where we just say summarize what we've done so far. This triggers the manual checkpoint, so Claude has a summary of everything it's done before and it gets it back on track. There's something already in Claude Code called /compact. If you type /compact, then Claude Code is going to do that automatically, where it takes everything from the conversation and basically creates a summary for that. The next one, we get a little bit more technical here, and we have the built-in Git safety system. This is Claude Code protecting your work or protecting what you've already done. So people that use Claude Code often worry that it's going to overwrite or break stuff. So essentially, you have a perfectly working website and you prompt Claude Code to do something and it breaks everything. This has been a worry for a lot of people that use Claude Code. And what we've seen in this leak is by default, Claude codes in a way that it's easy to reverse any changes that it has already made. Now, what does it do automatically? Well, it stashes your current work before any risky changes. It creates new branches instead of committing to the main. It errs on the side of caution with destructive operations, and it won't casually delete or overwrite important files. Now, we may not always want this. We may not always want this level of caution for Claude Code to work with. We may want it to just make the changes rather than being cautious all the time. And if you want to do that and you want to be more aggressive with Claude Code, then you can say something like you have full permissions. don't worry about reversibility. And this is going to prompt Claude to act not in a more reckless way, but in a way that the default reversibility feature that's already pre-built into Claude, it's going to stray more away from that and build the actual system like a real developer will do. The moral of the story here is your projects are more safer than you think, and it's cautious by design. Now the next thing is the undercover mode, and this is one of the more controversial things in this Claude Code leak. Now what is this undercover mode? Well, it's when Anthropic employees use Claude Code on public repos, they have a stealth mode that activates automatically. And what this does is it strips that co-authored by Claude Code from commits, it hides internal code names from all outputs, it removes the AI contribution percentage from PRs, and there is no off switch, so if you can't confirm the repo is private, stealth mode stays on. So ironically, we now know what undercover mode is because it failed to do exactly what it was built to do. So the undercover mode is essentially meant to stop us from being able to see or leaking stuff to public repos. We can now see exactly what it is because it leaks something to a public repo. Now in this leak we have some secret model code names, and these are potentially internal names for upcoming models. So we have Copybarra here, which is supposedly a Claude 4.6 variant already on internal version 8, which is meant to be far along the version stage. It's a 1 million token context window with a fast mode, and in the error logs for this we've seen that it has accuracy issues, so it has about a 29% false claims rate in V8. We also have Fennec, which is likely a premium version of Opus 4.6. The pricing that was leaked in it suggests that there's a fast mode at obviously a higher cost per token. We also have Numbat over here, which is still in testing. In the source code it says remove this section when we launch Numbat. Not really sure what that means, but we also see that there were some references to Opus 4.7 and Sonnet 4.8, so without a doubt Claude are moving quick in this space. Now lastly, we have some unreleased features that are coming soon. In here we've seen 44 hidden feature flags and 100 plus gated modules were found. The biggest one here is Kairos, and this is an always on agent, which I think is basically like ClaudeBot or OpenClaw, whatever it's called now. It's basically their version of that. So Claude is building their own version called Kairos, and this doesn't wait for you to ask. It runs 24/7 in the background. It can watch your GitHub repos, send notifications to you, and it can keep working while you sleep, which is basically what OpenClaw does. We also have UltraPlan, which is cloud-based planning. This sends complex tasks to a more powerful cloud model for up to 30 minutes, so it can run and work for up to 30 minutes, and then you review the plan in the browser before it executes anything. We also have a voice mode that is potentially coming, and this is where you talk to Claude Code instead of typing. So it's like spoken input and output, so you can essentially have a phone call with Claude Code. And then we have a web browser tool, which is Claude Code will be able to open up and navigate websites directly. Now that's a pretty big one, because if you've tried to design with Claude Code, then you know when you're trying to make a change, it sometimes finds it hard to find what you want to make a change, and then also changing it to something that looks better. Maybe if you're designing UI, because Claude can't see it, it finds it extremely difficult to be able to make the appropriate change or a better change than what it currently has. Now there's already skills now that you can give Claude Code, which gives it the ability to look and take screenshots of your websites, so when it's making changes it knows what it looks like. But it just seems now that Claude Code is going to build the web browser tool into Claude Code, so it's going to improve your design, just improve your quality of life while using Claude Code. Now this initial one that we mentioned, Kairos, is referenced over 150 times in the code, which obviously suggests that it's pretty close to launch, which seems pretty reasonable because OpenClaw has blown up, and I would imagine Claude Code are trying to get on the end of that bandwagon or not let OpenAI slip away, because OpenAI or ChatGPT have acquired OpenClaw, so I imagine Claude Code want to stay on top of that. But that's all of the major things that we can see in this leak. If you like that video, leave a like below. If you want to scale your own AI agency to over 100k per month, then click the first link below.